Peace. I just wanted to take a moment and elaborate a little bit on the video that I put up recently about the Illuminati for Teens. I had one of my viewers that posed the question, tell us how we can free ourselves from these devils. And if he had questions, then maybe some of you may have questions about why I approached discussing the Illuminati as a special interest group and put more of an emphasis on military strategy and social engineering in comparison to talking about conspiracy. One of the things that is very important for people is to always try to put things in a proper context and not to get sidetracked into a lot of abstract ideas. That's the reason why initially I emphasized studying the Illuminati as a historical society and as a special interest group that was founded in the 1770s under Adam Weishaupt in Germany. Because now you can put things in a proper perspective along the timeline of world chronology. So, in approaching it from that perspective, you realize that here was a minority group of people who represent a minority group of people on the planet Earth along millions of years of a timeline who have special interests that rose out of German social political circumstances in the 1700s. They had a specific platform, a certain type of mission statement, and a determined idea of what people say was illumination or whatever you want to call it. But when you put it in that context, you take it out of the arena of a boogeyman, out of something spooky and out of this big giant hand that is over the planet Earth with these League of Extraordinary Gentlemen that are pulling the strings like Geppetto and controlling the resources and dominating people. And, you get out of that arena of talking like that where you're powerless, where there's nothing you can do about it, and the more stories that you attribute to this giant organization that is manipulating the minds of the people and making Manchurian candidates, you stop shrinking down into this little small insignificant entity in light of this giant powerhouse that's controlling everything that you can't do nothing about, because that's not what it is. That's why I talked about when you go back and study ancient and classical civilizations and indigenous societies back in the hunter-gatherer times, you've always had special interest groups. You have people who organized themselves in cliques that worked in the best interest of what that clique or group actually was. Now, the difference is you've always had some people that operated for negative reasons, and you've had people that organize for positive reasons. You have people who organize to segregate themselves, and you have people who organize for more integration and coming together and advocating for one common cause collectively. How do you distinguish that? You usually distinguish that based upon the level of maturity and the level of evolution of those people and the platform or mission statement they're standing on. That's why I gave the analogy of kindergarten, because you have some people who have never evolved like that. So a lot of the societies that people are giving so much credit and credence to, usually represent the youngest members and the most immature members of the human family. People who have been here for no more than 6,000 and something years. So, of course, you're going to see a lot of kindergarten behavior. Of course, you're going to see a lot of self-centeredness, a lot of me, mine, with the determined idea with some of these type of organizations, religious groups, societies, and institutions, because some of it is being perpetuated by children in comparison to original people who are the fathers and mothers of civilization. So even when you're looking at America, who's only been here for about 238 years, and all of its technological advances and being a so-called superpower or world leader, that's nothing in comparison to many societies that have been here for thousands of years intact, whether they're classical or whether they're indigenous. You look at Yoruba culture in Central Asia, aka Africa, and that's over 10,000-year-old culture, customs, and traditions. 238 years is nothing in comparison to just that. And that's just one society of original people. So when you're looking at the grand scheme of things, or you're looking at things from a world view, you can see the proper context that things should be approached in, and not giving people, places, and things more credit than they actually deserve. Now, to move into the question about how we can free ourselves from these devils, first and foremost, I'm not sure what your cultural worldview and perspective is, but mine is God-centered. My worldview is based upon identifying the infinite potential or the supreme intelligence that is the essence of who and what I really am. I mean, even the average Christian, when faced with different type of circumstances or challenges in their life or trials and tribulations, have enough sense to say, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. So even a lot of average Christians don't give the devil more credit than he actually deserves or she actually deserves. So from our perspective, anything that we look at that is adversarial or that is a challenge is there because it allows us to help show forth and prove our power that we are all wise and righteous and can overcome any of these type of circumstances. So, in other words, nothing has the power over us. If we think that something has the power over us or has control over us or is oppressing us, it's because we only allow it. Meaning, we always have a choice and an option when we're looking at ourselves as supreme intelligence or as infinite potential. At no point in our growth and development or in our journey is there a situation that we cannot do, or something that we cannot rise above, or something that we cannot handle or navigate around. So to even ask the question, how can we free ourselves from these devils? The first and foremost response to that is, we are free. A devil or anybody that you believe has some type of control over your life only has it because you allow them to have that type of control. In hindsight, which is always 20/20, you can look at certain experiences that you've gone through in your life and see that there was always other options that you could have taken, but you might not have been able to see it at that particular time because sometimes we can miss the forest for the trees. Meaning, you can be going through certain situations, and because you're on a ground level, you may not have the type of bird's eye view or perspective to recognize all of the different angles or options that are provided to you, especially if you're emotionally involved and you're saturated with the type of experiences or things that you're going through in that situation instead of rising above that situation. So that is the number one perspective to have about any situation, that you always have a choice. Even if somebody has a gun up to your head, you still have an option of how you choose to respond to that situation. So at no point are you ever powerless. So once you take things from that perspective, that getting yourself out of any situation that you may see as oppressive or as having some type of dominance or control over you is because you allow it. Now you have the right perspective to be able to actually interface and engage that situation from a seat and position of infinite potential and power. Because if you're not looking at it like that, you are always in a position where you are powerless, and that you can give people a little bit too much credit than they actually deserve as having control over your life. And sometimes people like putting themselves in that position because it's easy to blame somebody else instead of taking a responsibility for what they can do to change those type of situations. So a lot of us as original people who are living in this society of America are a nation within a nation. Even if we don't choose to identify ourselves as such, we are people within a society that has never been welcoming as far as us participating in an equal standard. So we can take it from that perspective and realize that we always have an option to set up and do things for ourselves like we did at one particular point when we weren't allowed to participate during the times of slavery and during the times of segregation. Or we can interact with the society as if it's something that this society has to do for us to have some sense of freedom. You know, we can look at the dominant society and say, what are you going to do to set us free? You know, and honestly, that is the wrong perspective, because, like I said, you're giving people a little bit too much credit than they actually deserve in light of the infinite potential and supreme intelligence that exists within you. So that goes for any of those kind of situations, and it also goes for this conspiracy idea of this big shadowy giant hand over the earth called the Illuminati. You know that historically this is a group of people that organized in a very, very, very small place in Germany, and they represent a minority group on the planet Earth. And you know, we've been here for millions of years before that even happened, and we will be here and have been here hundreds of years after that happened. So this was inspiring, it was educating, it was empowering for those of you who want to give a little more clarity on what I was talking about originally, and to put things in the proper perspective and not being spooked out and having this boogeyman idea about who people, places, and things are in relationship to your ability to navigate around and to have control over the things in your life. Peace.